The smell of a funeral parlor doesn't just fade with time. It doesn't cling to your clothes the way incense does. It burrows deep into some corner of your mind. And in the middle of the night, it crawls back out. Even now, when it rains, I still smell that air. The scent of wet chrysanthemums. The damp rising from old wooden floors. The heavy, suffocating mix of cold tonjira soup and stale air. After that night, I have never been able to go to a funeral parlor alone. I was 29 when it happened. I was working at a small auto repair shop in Shizuoka City. The people around me thought I was a practical guy. I believed that about myself too. I never believed in ghosts. When people told me scary stories, I always figured there was a rational explanation. The strange sounds in the early morning? Just the pipes. Just the wind. That's the kind of person I was. So there's only one reason I'm telling you this story. That night, a dead man called my name. The call came on a Friday afternoon. I was changing engine oil at the shop when my mother called. Her voice was much quieter than usual. Kenji, Uncle Hiroshi passed away. I stopped moving. The wrench went still in my hand. Uncle Hiroshi was the quietest person among my mother's relatives. He lived alone on the outskirts of Shizuoka City. Even at New Year's, he barely said a word. But somehow he was the person I remembered most. He was the only adult I ever felt completely at ease with as a child. While other adults told me to study or behave properly, Uncle Hiroshi would just sit beside me and quietly peel tangerines for me. That man was gone now. Sudden cardiac arrest. I drove straight to the funeral parlor after work. It was an old building near a national road on the edge of the city. Not the kind of bright, modern facility you see today. Yellowed wallpaper. Fluorescent lights that flickered faintly. A building that had seen too many years. The moment I pulled into the parking lot, the rain started. At first it was gentle. Then it came down hard. The wipers thrashed back and forth, and the funeral home sign beyond the windshield blurred like something underwater. That's when a strange feeling came over me. An urge to just turn around. No real reason. I just wanted to stay in the car a little longer. But I'd already texted the family that I'd arrived. So I shut off the engine and opened my umbrella. The entrance was unnervingly quiet. Funeral homes are usually full of shuffling footsteps, muffled crying, the slurred voices of relatives who've been drinking. That night the silence was wrong. Only the rain seemed loud. As I stepped into the corridor, a cold chill rose from the floor and crept up my ankles. At first I thought it was air conditioning. But this wasn't machine cold. It was the damp, hollow cold of a basement that had been sealed for years. The Sogi room was at the far end of the third floor. When the elevator doors opened, I heard a faint wailing. Someone crying somewhere far away. Like a breath barely escaping. But something about it was wrong. The crying kept repeating at exactly the same pitch and rhythm. Like a recording. I turned around without thinking. The hallway was empty. A few fluorescent lights trembled slightly. Along the base of the wall, a long dark stain spread where rainwater had seeped in. And at that moment, I felt it for the first time. A sharp, heavy stare. No one was there, but someone was watching me. I pretended to check my phone and looked around. Still no one. I walked into the Sogi room. The relatives greeted me. Everyone looked exhausted. Aunt Fumiko's eyes were badly swollen. Cousin Daisuke smelled like he'd been drinking for hours. I approached the altar, bowed, and offered incense. Then I looked at the IHAI memorial photo. Something felt wrong. Uncle Hiroshi's face in the photo was subtly different from the one I remembered. I couldn't explain it exactly. It was his face, no doubt. But the smile at the corners of his mouth looked forced. Like someone had pasted a grin onto a face that didn't want to smile. And the eyes were the strangest part. Even in a photograph, his pupils looked wet. Alive. I couldn't hold my gaze on it. I looked away. That night, a few relatives left early. But the close family stayed. I stayed too. I had planned to leave before dawn, but Aunt Fumiko said she was too scared to be alone. So I agreed to keep watch over the Sogi room. By 11 o'clock, the funeral parlor had grown even quieter. The mourners had all gone. The ones left were running on fumes. The air grew heavier with the smell of tonjira, incense, and sake. I stepped into the hallway to get some air. That's when I saw someone standing at the far end of the corridor. A woman in black. At first I assumed she was one of the bereaved family. But I couldn't see her face. She had her head bent all the way down. I was about to walk past when I stopped. She was barefoot, standing on the cold hallway floor with nothing on her feet. A chill ran down my spine. "Excuse me." I spoke carefully. She slowly raised her head. But her face was swallowed in shadow. The fluorescent light directly above her flickered once. And a curtain of darkness fell across her features. She whispered low, "Don't go to the basement." I thought I'd misheard. "Sorry?" She said it again, slowly. "Never go to the basement alone." The moment she finished speaking, the elevator dinged behind me. I turned instinctively. When I looked back, she was gone. The hallway was empty. Not even a footstep. I stood there for a long moment. My heart was pounding in a way it had no right to. I hadn't had a single drink. But my face burned and my fingertips were ice. Something tapped my shoulder from behind. I nearly screamed. It was Cousin Daisuke. "Hey, what's wrong?" I forced a smile and shook my head. "Nothing. Just startled." Daisuke's face was worn out. He held up a cigarette. "Come outside with me." We went to the smoking area at the back of the building. The rain had gotten much worse. The sound of it hitting the canopy was almost deafening. Daisuke was about to light up when he suddenly spoke. "Kenji." "Yeah?" "Did you hear it?" I looked at him. "Hear what?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he muttered, "Someone's been knocking on the refrigeration unit door." The moment he said it, through the sound of the rain, something was hitting something. Somewhere below the building. Slow. Steady. I tried to rationalize it. It could be the rain. The old building's pipes making noise. But Daisuke's face was not the face of someone joking around. His lips had gone pale. The hand holding the cigarette was trembling slightly. And right then, my phone vibrated. An unknown number on the screen. I answered without thinking. Hello? Quote. A brief silence. Then a familiar voice. It was Uncle Hiroshi's voice. The man who was dead. Kenji. Every drop of blood in my body went cold at once. I couldn't move. The rain kept hammering the canopy above. Daisuke stood beside me, cigarette between his lips, staring at my face. In that moment, something strange happened. All other sounds disappeared. Only the voice coming through the phone was clear. Kenji, you shouldn't be there. It was definitely Uncle Hiroshi's voice. Low and rough, slightly hoarse. The same slow drawl. The same way he trailed off at the end of sentences. Exactly right. My mouth had gone bone dry. I barely managed to speak. Who is this? Quote. A short, sharp inhale from the other end. Then again. Don't go down. Click. The call ended. I held the phone to my ear without moving. Daisuke stared at me. What was that? Quote. I couldn't answer. My mind was spinning. I wanted to believe it was a prank. But the voice was too precise. Uncle Hiroshi's slow enunciation. The way he let his words fade at the end. Every detail exact. Kenji. Daisuke called my name again. I barely caught myself. It's nothing. But my voice was shaking. He could tell. Daisuke stared at my face for a long moment. Then he dropped his cigarette and ground it out. You felt it too, didn't you? Something's wrong. I said nothing. My silence was the answer. He lowered his voice and glanced around. I went down to the basement earlier. My stomach dropped. The barefoot woman's words came back to me. Don't go to the basement. Why? Quote. A staff member asked me to check on the refrigeration unit. He swallowed once before continuing. But it's strange down there. What do you mean? Quote. He licked his dry lips. At the far end of the hallway near the freezer units. Someone keeps walking around. Goosebumps crawled up my neck. Wasn't it an employee? Quote. That's what I thought at first. He gave a short laugh. But it wasn't a laughing face. The footsteps were wrong though. What kind of wrong? Quote. He whispered. Bare feet. Wet bare feet. My fingertips went cold in an instant. He kept talking. Splash. Splash. The sound of walking with wet feet, you know? Like something soaked stepping on concrete. The smell of rain hit me hard. And at the same moment, I remembered the barefoot woman from the hallway. I turned around without thinking. Through the glass door behind the smoking area, the funeral home corridor stretched long. The fluorescent light trembled faintly. And for just a second, a black shadow slipped past at the far end of the glass. I froze. Daisuke. Daisuke. Over there. He turned to look. But there was already nothing. The corridor was empty. He let out a long sigh and shook his head. Forget it. We're both just on edge. But even as he said it, when we walked back inside, he didn't step more than a foot away from me. The soggy room was quieter than before. Some relatives were sleeping in their chairs. A muted news broadcast flickered on the TV. Aunt Fumiko was dozing in the corner. I sat down and pretended to be calm. But my mind was a wreck. The phone call. Uncle Hiroshi's voice. The basement. The bare feet. Everything was connecting in a way that felt wrong. That's when a dull sound came from somewhere below. Everyone in the room looked up at the same time. Louder this time, like someone hammering on a large metal door from the inside. Daisuke's face went rigid. You heard it, right? Quote. I nodded without speaking. Aunt Fumiko asked, her face tight with fear. That sound. What is it? Quote. No one could answer. A moment later, a middle-aged male employee opened the door and walked in. Black suit, deep hollows under his eyes. I apologize. That's the sound from the refrigeration unit piping. He said it like he'd said it 100 times. But his expression was frozen. Daisuke pressed him immediately. Why does it keep sounding like someone's knocking? Quote. The employee paused. It's an old building. That's how it sounds. The moment he finished. Again. This time it sounded like it was coming from directly below us. I watched his face stiffen. Clearly. He bowed quickly and hurried out of the room. My chest tightened. Something was telling me to leave. Like something below was trying to come up. It was a crazy thought. But it felt like certainty. It was around 1 in the morning. Daisuke finally passed out from the drink. Aunt Fumiko went to the restroom to lie down for a bit. I was alone in the sogi room. The buzz of the fluorescent lights seemed unusually loud. Zzzt. A thin, sharp sound. I looked up at the IHAI memorial photo for no particular reason. And stopped breathing. The eyes in the photo looked different from before. Wider open. Like someone staring desperately at something. I told myself over and over. It's just exhaustion. The face looks different depending on the angle. I kept rationalizing. And then, the sogi room door began to open. Very slowly. I turned. No one was there. Only the faint light from the hallway spilling in. Hello? Quote. No answer. Instead, from somewhere in the corridor, the sound of water dripping. And strangely, the sound seemed to be getting closer. I rose slowly from my seat. My heart was slamming. And then, splash. The sound of bare feet walking on the hallway floor. Splash. Splash. Slowly. Walking through water. I couldn't breathe properly. The sound was getting closer. From between the shadows at the end of the corridor, something slowly began to appear. Long hair hanging down. Wet black clothes. Arms dangling limp at the sides. I was frozen solid. It was her, the barefoot woman from before. This time, I could see her face. It was horrifying. Chalk white. Her skin had gone gray. Her lips were black and dry. The area beneath her eyes was swollen like someone who had been submerged in water for a long time. But the strangest thing was her eyes. The pupils were almost invisible. Just the whites. Cloudy and floating. She stared directly at me. And in a raspy voice, she murmured, "Why are you still here?" Quote. I couldn't speak. My legs wouldn't move. She tilted her head slowly. The angle was wrong. The bones in her neck cracked. He keeps calling for you. The moment she finished. Crash! A massive impact exploded from the floor below. Cups rattled on the altar table. I nearly screamed. When I looked back at the corridor, she was gone. The elevator door at the end of the hall was open. The button for the basement floor was lit, and standing faintly inside the elevator was someone. A man in a black suit. Head bowed. I stepped back on instinct. Then the man slowly raised his head. My heart stopped. It was Uncle Hiroshi. The man who should have been in the mortuary was standing inside the elevator. Pale face, eyes wet, and lips moving slowly. Kenji, quote, I ran. No time to think. I just ran. I nearly threw myself into the soggy room. Knocked over a chair. The sleeping relatives startled awake. Someone asked what was wrong. I couldn't form words. My throat was making a sound like grinding metal with every breath. Kenji, what happened? Quote, Aunt Fumiko grabbed my arm, face white with fear. I pointed toward the corridor with a trembling hand. Over there, over there. But the corridor was empty. The elevator door was already closed. The hall was silent and bare, just like when I arrived. Daisuke frowned. You haven't even been drinking. I knew I looked completely unhinged. But I had seen it. Uncle Hiroshi standing in the elevator. The pale, wet face. His lips moving slowly, looking right at me. I dropped into a chair without a word. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. After 2 in the morning, the atmosphere in the room collapsed entirely. Everyone was exhausted. No one spoke. The silent home shopping channel played on the TV. The chrysanthemum scent had turned into something closer to rot. I made a point of not looking at the memorial photo, because I kept feeling a pair of eyes on me. I couldn't tell whether the gaze was coming from the photo or the hallway. Then Aunt Fumiko spoke quietly. Kenji, can you go down to the basement for me? Quote, my stomach dropped. I didn't answer right away. She explained in her exhausted voice. The staff said earlier that we should pick up Hiroshi's personal belongings. I forgot with everything going on. My mouth had gone completely dry. The basement. Just that one word made my insides go cold. Daisuke's expression hardened too. Does it have to be right now? Quote, she nodded apologetically. They said the morning would be too hectic with the procedures. Silence. No one volunteered. And then, a dull crash from somewhere below. Closer than before. Like it had come from directly beneath our feet. Aunt Fumiko's face went white. Kenji, go with Daisuke. I didn't want to go. But seeing her terrified face, I couldn't say no. In the end, Daisuke and I agreed to go down together. Standing at the elevator, I kept looking back. I kept feeling like someone at the far end of the hallway was watching us. But all I could see was the dim flickering of the fluorescent light. The elevator door opened. The inside was impossibly cold. Like stepping into a refrigerator. Daisuke forced a laugh. It's probably nothing. I didn't say anything. I pressed the basement button. The door slowly closed. As the elevator descended, the silence inside was wrong. Even the mechanical hum was almost gone. Instead, a faint sound came from below. Something lightly touching metal. I stared at the floor indicator. 3rd floor. 2nd floor. 1st floor. Basement level 1. The door opened. A blast of cold air hit my face. I stopped breathing instinctively. The smell. Cold iron. And beneath it, faint but unmistakable, something raw. The hallway lights were half dead. Some fluorescents kept blinking. The floor was wet. Water, or something else, I couldn't be sure. Daisuke hissed under his breath. What the hell is wrong with this place? At the far end of the corridor, there was a small management room. We moved fast, trying to get this done and get back upstairs. We hadn't taken many steps. A sound behind us. We both stopped. Someone walking barefoot on a wet floor. Daisuke slowly turned around. Is anyone there? Quote. No answer. The hallway was empty. But the sound continued. Getting closer. The back of my neck went ice cold. It felt like someone was right behind us. But when we turned, nothing was there. Daisuke forced himself forward. Ignore it. Keep moving. We were both terrified and too proud to show it. We walked faster. When we reached the management room, a faint light leaked from under the door. Daisuke knocked carefully. Hello? Quote. No answer. The door was slightly open. He pushed it slowly. Inside, no one. Only one small fluorescent light blinking weakly. On the desk, a cup of instant noodles. Half finished. Steam still faintly rising. Like someone had been sitting there just moments ago. That's when I noticed something strange. On one wall, a CCTV monitor. One screen was flickering static, showing the corridor outside. And the image showed our backs. Except it should have been just the two of us. It wasn't. There was a woman standing behind us. Long wet hair hanging down. Bare feet. I couldn't breathe. Daisuke went rigid the moment he saw the screen too. Together, we slowly turned around. Nothing. We looked back at the monitor. She was still there. And she was very slowly lifting her head. White eyes. Swollen face. Skin like something that had been underwater for a long time. Then the monitor screen broke apart with static. And went black. At the same time, the management room fluorescent light went out. Darkness swallowed everything instantly. Daisuke cursed. What the? Quote. And then we heard it. Right outside the door. Someone was standing there. Very close. We couldn't even breathe properly. We just stared at the door. Then, through the gap at the bottom, water began to seep inside. Dark, reddish water. The raw smell hit us full force. Every part of me froze. Daisuke whispered through trembling lips. Run. Quote. The moment he said it. Bang. The door rattled violently from outside. We both screamed and grabbed the door handle. Something outside was hammering on it with everything it had. Thud, thud, thud. The metal door buckled. I was nearly crying as I held the handle. Who's there? Quote. Instead of an answer, a sound unlike anything human came through. Like crying and laughing at the same time. Like a voice full of water. And between those sounds, very low. Open it. I thought my heart had burst. That voice was Uncle Hiroshi's voice. Daisuke's face went blue. The door shook again. Thud. The lights came back on in that moment. And under the door we could see a shadow. A human shadow. But the feet weren't touching the floor. It was hovering slightly above the ground. Just then, from the end of the corridor. Ding! The elevator arrival chime sounded. The knocking stopped. All at once, complete silence. The pressure behind the door was gone. With trembling hands, Daisuke cracked the door open slightly. The hallway was empty. But on the floor, a trail of wet footprints remained, leading toward the elevator. And at the end, the elevator doors were open. Standing inside was a woman. The barefoot woman. She slowly raised one finger toward us and placed it against her own lips. Shish. Everything in me wanted to run. Every instinct screamed it. Get out, now. Do not follow her. But I couldn't look away. She stood inside the elevator, wet hair hanging around her face. Staring at us. No, staring at me. Daisuke muttered with a stiff face. You see that, right? Quote. I barely managed to nod. She held her finger to her lips and stayed perfectly still. Then very slowly lowered her hand and pointed with one finger at something on the elevator floor. At first I didn't understand. Then the light flickered once. And I saw it. A single black shoe. Uncle Hiroshi's shoe. The worn black shoes from the IHAI memorial photo. Ice spread from my spine outward. Daisuke asked in a trembling voice. That's the uncle's, right? Quote. As I was about to answer, the elevator door began to slowly close. She kept her eyes on us until the very last moment. And just before the doors met, she opened her mouth. Before it's too late. The doors closed. The elevator began rising. Daisuke and I stood in silence for a long time. The corridor had gone still again. But colder than before. Like somewhere nearby, a freezer door had been left open. Daisuke was the first to come back to himself. Hey, let's get upstairs. I couldn't answer easily. My mind was too tangled. Why were Uncle Hiroshi's shoes in there? Who was that woman? And why did she keep warning us to stay away from the basement? Then, a small sound from inside the management room. We both turned. At the back of the management room was a small iron door. One I hadn't noticed before. Dim light leaked from beneath it. Daisuke's face went hard. Was that there before? Quote. I didn't answer. Honestly, I couldn't remember. Had I missed it earlier, or had it not been there? And then again, from inside the door, a scratching sound. Like a fingernail slowly dragging across metal. Every hair on my body stood up. Daisuke stared at the iron door and muttered something. What the hell is that? I wanted to run. But my feet wouldn't move. It was like a voice was whispering inside my head. Open it. Check. Something is in there. I hated that feeling. It didn't feel like my own thought. Daisuke walked toward the iron door. Don't. Let's just go. I called after him urgently. But he grabbed the handle like he hadn't heard me. The cold metal scraped as it turned. The door opened slowly. Cold air flooded out. And we saw stairs. Narrow, dark stairs leading down. Basement level 2. My breath caught. The funeral parlor was only supposed to have one basement floor. Daisuke was just as rattled. What? On one wall there was an old sign. The text was blurred by moisture, barely readable. At that moment, a sound came from the darkness below. Thud. Slow. Thud. Thud. The same sound we'd been hearing all night. Daisuke swallowed. That's not the refrigeration unit. I slowly shook my head. No, it wasn't. This was the sound of someone knocking on a door. Someone trying to get out. And right then, from the darkness below, a faint voice rose up. Kenji. I froze solid. It was Uncle Hiroshi's voice. This time much clearer. Like it was coming from just one level below. Help me. Daisuke seized my arm. His hand was shaking. You heard that? Quote. I could only nod. And then, all the fluorescent lights in the hallway behind us went out at once. Darkness collapsed over everything. Only the small light inside the management room remained, faint and flickering. And in the darkness of the staircase below, something moved. Slowly. The sound of a wet body being pulled along the floor. Coming up. Daisuke cursed and stumbled back. Close the door. Quote. We shoved the iron door with everything we had. But it wouldn't close properly. Something was caught in it from the inside. And through that gap, a hand shot through. Gray skin. Bloated, swollen fingers. Fingernails gone black. I screamed. Daisuke wailed and threw himself against the door. The hand gripped the doorframe with impossible strength. And through the narrow gap, part of a face appeared. Wet hair. The smell of rot. And between slack, dripping lips. Cold. I felt my mind begin to crack. Daisuke slammed his full body weight against the door. With a heavy bang, the iron door finally shut. We both grabbed the handle. Inside, the knocking continued. The entire door vibrated. Something was still trying to get out. Open it. A voice. It sounded like Uncle Hiroshi, but also like a woman. Also like several people at once. Multiple whispers layered over each other in a single voice. Daisuke nearly screamed. Run! Quote. We bolted down the corridor. The floor was slick. We were gasping before we reached the elevator. Behind us, the iron door kept pounding. We reached the elevator and hammered the button. But the elevator didn't come. The numbers stayed frozen on the upper floors. Daisuke cursed and turned toward the stairs. Emergency stairs. Quote. We burst through the stairwell door and started climbing like we were being chased by death itself. But something was wrong. The stairs didn't end. We should have reached the first floor almost immediately. Instead, the same scene repeated over and over. Gray walls. Blinking emergency lights. That damp, suffocating smell. Daisuke's breathing got rougher. Something's wrong with this. I couldn't answer. Because I felt it too. We were still going up. But the floor indicator never changed. B1. 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 Then from above, footsteps. Someone was coming down the stairs. Very slowly. We both stopped. Under the dim emergency lights, a figure appeared from above. The barefoot woman. But this time her face was different. Much closer now. Her skin looked like it was dissolving, soft and unraveling. Her neck was bent at an impossible angle. She looked at us and exhaled roughly. Why did you come down? Quote. Daisuke asked in a shaking voice. Who are you? Quote. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly closed her eyes. And in a very small voice, she whispered. That door should never have been opened. At that moment, a massive impact from below Crash! The entire staircase shook. And from the darkness beneath us, dozens of footsteps started at once. Something was coming up. Not one thing. Many. But the sound was too regular. Too perfect. Dozens of feet moving, and yet every single step fell at the exact same moment. Like one creature with too many legs crawling up through the dark. I couldn't breathe. In the blackness below, something slow and massive was writhing. Daisuke was nearly sobbing. What is happening? The barefoot woman stood on the middle of the stairs and kept very still. She wasn't looking at us. Only at the darkness below. And in a low, hoarse voice she said, "Go up." I asked without thinking. "What is that?" Quote. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she turned her clouded white eyes toward me. Through the pale haze, dark threads like burst veins were spreading. People who couldn't leave. The moment those words landed. From below, a long metallic scraping sound rose through the shaft. The emergency lights on the lower floors started going out one by one. Darkness climbed toward us, floor by floor. Daisuke grabbed my arm. "Go." Quote. We ran upward again. Our lungs were burning. Our legs felt like they'd give out. But we could not stop. Behind us, those footsteps kept following. Too close. Like they were right at our heels. And then, right behind my ear, someone whispered, "Kenji." I screamed and spun around. Nothing. But it was absolutely Uncle Hiroshi's voice. Daisuke shouted, "Why did you stop?" Quote. We ran harder, tearing up the stairs. And then a door appeared ahead of us. First floor. I hit it like I was trying to break it down. We burst out into the funeral home corridor. All sounds cut off instantly. The hallway was strangely quiet. The footsteps, the knocking, all of it, gone. I heaved for air and looked back. The emergency stairwell door was slowly swinging shut. And just before it closed, through the gap in the darkness, a white hand reached out and grabbed the edge. But it couldn't come through. The door shut. Daisuke slid straight down to the floor. His face was completely drained. That wasn't human. I said nothing. Because I already knew. It was not human. We were barely catching our breath when we heard footsteps from the far end of the hallway. We tensed up immediately. It was the funeral home employee. The one we'd seen before. Hollow-eyed. He looked at our condition and went rigid. "Did you go down there?" Quote. Daisuke immediately demanded. "What is down there?" Quote. The employee's expression locked up. He looked around once, then lowered his voice. "Not here." He took us to a small room that looked like a storage closet. An old sofa. Cleaning supplies stacked in the corner. A tight space. Even after closing the door, he was silent for a long time. Like a man who doesn't know where to start. I spoke first. "What is down there? What exactly?" Quote. He looked worn through. He ran a palm slowly over his face. Then in a very quiet voice, he said, "A space that was never supposed to exist." I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" Quote. "It was built during the old days when this place was different. It's been sealed off since then." His voice kept getting softer. "But sometimes the door opens." Daisuke let out an incredulous laugh. You're telling us this now? Quote, at first, everyone thinks it's just the building. The employee cut himself off. His eyes were trembling with something strange. But some of the people who've gone in, they've come back wrong. Ice ran down my spine. Wrong how? Quote, he didn't answer right away. He was quiet. Then slowly he said, they start hearing the voices of dead people. The air went out of my lungs. He continued, at first they think it's just in their heads. But the voices keep getting closer. Daisuke exhaled a quiet curse. The employee looked at both of us in turn. Who was calling you? Quote, I didn't answer. But the silence was enough. He slowly closed his eyes. It's starting again, isn't it? At that moment, the air in the room went cold. And very faintly. Water dropping from the ceiling. We all looked up at once. A dark stain was spreading across the center of the ceiling. Water seeping through. But the color was wrong. It had red in it. Daisuke stepped back. Hey, look at that. A drop fell to the floor. Drip. The raw smell spread instantly. The employee went white. No. He shot to his feet and moved toward the door. Go upstairs right now. Don't leave the Sogi room empty. I grabbed his arm. Why? Quote, instead of answering, he pushed us toward the door. Go, now. At that moment, the lights in the entire hallway went out. Snap. Darkness fell in an instant. And from right outside the door, we heard someone breathing. Rough, wet breathing. Daisuke whispered in a shaking voice. Is someone out there? Quote, we couldn't breathe properly. We just stared at the door. Then through the gap at the bottom. Dark reddish water began to seep inside. The same color as the room upstairs. The employee murmured like he was praying. Don't look at them. Then the door began to screech. Scree. Fingernails. Dozens of fingernails on the door at the same time. Every hair on my body stood at attention. And between those sounds, voices started. Multiple people whispering at once. Cold. Open it. I'm still in here. One of those voices was definitely Uncle Hiroshi's. I jammed my fingers over my ears. It didn't stop. The voices got closer. Right next to my ear now. Kenji. I spun around screaming. My heart had stopped. In the back corner of the storage room. In the darkness. Someone was standing. It was Uncle Hiroshi. But it was no longer a human face. The skin had bloated and split. The mouth was torn wide open, impossibly wide. And the eyes. The pupils were gone. 2 black holes where eyes should have been. He moved his lips slowly. Why did you take so long? Quote, at that moment, a brutal impact from outside. The door bent inward. The employee screamed. Run! Quote, and Uncle Hiroshi, it moved. Too fast. I didn't have time to scream. My body reacted before my mind did. I lurched backward. Daisuke nearly tackled me toward the door. The door slammed again. Something outside was ramming it over and over. The door hinges shrieked like they were about to tear off. The employee screamed at us, face dead white. Don't make eye contact. Quote, too late. I had seen it. In the dark, that face. Uncle Hiroshi's face, or whatever was wearing it. It wasn't human. The way it moved was impossible. No bones. No joints. Fluid. Melting. And yet it moved across the floor like an animal. Fast. Wet skin hitting the floor. The storage room lights burst bright, then died again. In that fraction of a second, I saw something worse. Behind Uncle Hiroshi, dozens of faces were layered, overlapping, pressed together. An old man, a young woman, a child, all of them waterlogged and rotting. And every single one of them opened their mouths at once. Cold. My mind was coming apart. The employee shoved us roughly. Move. Quote. We burst into the corridor. Behind us, the storage room door exploded outward. And immediately, something dragging itself across the floor. Daisuke howled. Elevator. Quote. We sprinted down the corridor like madmen. Most of the lights in the funeral home were out now. Only the red emergency lighting pulsed weakly. In that red glow, the corridor looked less like a funeral home and more like a flooded underground tunnel. And the smell thickened. Rot, wet soil, something ancient and rancid. I was gagging as I ran. Behind us, the sounds kept following. Not one, many, all dragging across the floor. Daisuke hammered the elevator button. Come on, come on. Quote. I looked back. In the darkness of the corridor, shapes were moving. Human-shaped but wrong. Bodies bent impossibly. Shadows crawling along the floor. And through those shapes, Uncle Hiroshi's face. His mouth was split open ear to ear in something like a grin. The elevator door opened. We threw ourselves inside. The employee dove in after us. The door began to close. The shadows in the corridor stopped at once. All of them lifted their heads simultaneously. Dozens of faces looking at us at once. The door shut. I dropped straight to the floor. I couldn't breathe. Daisuke was against the wall, gasping hard. But the employee kept staring at the floor indicator panel. The first floor button hadn't been pressed. None of the buttons were lit. The elevator wasn't moving. Silence. Then slowly, the display changed. B2. My heart stopped. Daisuke shouted. Why are we going down? Quote. The employee slammed every button frantically. No response. The elevator was moving on its own. Downward. Slowly. The mechanical sound was too loud. And at that moment, the ceiling. All three of us looked up at once. Something was on top of the elevator. Moving slowly across the roof. The metal panels bending under its weight. The sound of crawling. Daisuke went completely pale. Something's up there. A single drop fell from the ceiling crack. Onto my face. Cold. Thick. I wiped it. Dark red. I nearly broke down entirely. No, no, no. The ceiling began to bow downward slowly. Something was pressing on it from above with its body. And then, the emergency hatch in the elevator ceiling began to open. Through the widening gap, wet hair hung down. Daisuke screamed. Open the doors. Open them. Quote. The employee jammed the emergency stop button again and again. Nothing. The hair descended further. And between the strands, a face slowly came into view. The barefoot woman. But nothing like before. Her skin was cracked open. Her mouth was filled with black water. She stared down at me. And opened her mouth. Black water dripped from her chin. Thick drops falling. Why are you taking them down? Quote. As those words left her mouth, the elevator slammed to a stop. The lights cut out, then surged back. In that one fraction of a second, behind the woman, pressed against the ceiling, dozens of faces staring down. All of them looking at us. I was losing my mind. The employee suddenly shouted, "Cover your ears." Quote. Then, a sound tore through the elevator. A scream that rattled every wall. Men's voices. Women's voices. A child's crying. All of it layered into something unbearable. I crouched on the floor, hands pressed hard to my ears. The sound was shredding through my skull. And through all of it, one voice remained clear. Uncle Hiroshi. Kenji. Come with me. I'm cold. I was barely holding on. And then the elevator slammed to a stop. Silence. All sounds ceased. I slowly opened my eyes. One red emergency light glowing faintly. The ceiling was empty. The hatch was closed. Only the three of us in the elevator. Daisuke exhaled shakily. Is it over? Quote. No. The moment I saw the floor display, I knew. B3. A floor that shouldn't exist. And very slowly, the elevator doors began to open. Cold fog poured in. Outside was only darkness. Not a single light, but the floor was wet, gleaming faintly in the pitch black. From far in that darkness, footsteps approached. And slowly, one by one, figures emerged. All of them soaked. All of them with their heads bowed. All of them barefoot. And at the very front, Uncle Hiroshi. He slowly raised his face. This time he wasn't grinning. He was weeping, shedding black water from his eyes. Why did you take so long? Quote. I could not move, seeing his face through the elevator doors. Something inside me froze. It was the expression. Every other version of Uncle Hiroshi had been monstrous. Grinning, torn open, crawling. But this one looked genuinely sad. The same drooping eyes. The same trailing speech. Exactly how he looked when he was alive. Even with black water streaming down his face. Somehow this felt like the real him. My mind began to crack. What if this is actually him? What if he's trapped down here, alone? It made no sense. But it burrowed deep. Daisuke grabbed my arm hard. Don't look. His voice was shaking. Don't go with it. I pulled myself back. The space outside the elevator was impossibly large. Less like a basement, more like a flooded underground tunnel with no end in sight. No ceiling visible. A shallow pool of water covering the floor. And behind Uncle Hiroshi, dozens more figures. All of them with heads bowed. Soaking wet. Not a single breath among them. Then the employee said very quietly, "Close your eyes." We both looked at him. His face had completely collapsed. Sweat and tears running together. Lips gone blue. With a trembling hand, he reached for the close door button. No response. Outside, Uncle Hiroshi took one step forward. Water splashing. And the figures behind him moved as one. Like a single body. I stumbled back. My spine hit the elevator wall. Uncle Hiroshi slowly raised one hand. A bloated, water-cracked hand. He reached it toward me and said, "You shouldn't have left me alone." And then, the barefoot woman's voice. "Don't believe it." Right beside us. We turned at the same time. In the corner of the elevator, where no one had been a moment before, the woman stood, wet hair framing her pale face. She was staring through the door with fierce, burning eyes. "That's not him anymore." Uncle Hiroshi's face warped. Under his eyes, the skin tore open. The corners of his mouth stretched abnormally high. Behind him, all the figures raised their heads at once. Every face was rotted. Waterlogged corpses staring. I swallowed my scream. The employee shouted, "Close it!" Quote. The barefoot woman lunged forward. She thrust her hand between the elevator doors. Something impossible happened. The doors that wouldn't budge slowly began to close. Outside, everything screamed. A sound that split the ears. Uncle Hiroshi's face became something else entirely. His jaw unhinged. Black water poured from his mouth. "Don't go." Quote. The doors inched closed. But dozens of hands were forcing their way through the gap. Bloated hands. Blackened fingernails. They grabbed the doors. The elevator heaved and shook. Daisuke howled. "It's not closing." Quote. The barefoot woman gritted her teeth and held the door. The skin on her hands split open. Black water ran from her knuckles. "Hurry." Quote. And in that moment I understood. She had never been trying to hurt us. She had been holding it back all along. Everything coming up from below. And then, Uncle Hiroshi shoved his face through the closing gap. Black empty eye sockets staring straight into mine. He said it very clearly. "You opened the door." My heart fell through the floor. The iron door on the second basement level. The door we had opened. As those words ended, a hand shot through the gap and grabbed my ankle. Ice cold. I screamed. Daisuke yanked me back. The employee brought his heel down on that hand with full force. The feeling wasn't human. Like stamping on wet rubber. Dark water sprayed in every direction. The barefoot woman screamed, "Close your eyes." Quote. The elevator light exploded. Total blackness. And then a scream that shook every molecule. Dozens of voices all at once. Fingernails on the door. Something like wet laughter gurgling from throats full of water. I pressed my hands to my ears and curled on the floor. My ears felt like they were being torn apart from inside. And through all of it, just one voice, steady and clear. "Kenji, stay with me. I'm cold." That voice was getting closer. I could feel the breath on my ear. I was nearly gone. And then suddenly, silence. Everything stopped. The elevator stopped moving. I slowly opened my eyes. One red emergency light. The ceiling was clear. The hatch was shut. Just the three of us. The barefoot woman was gone. The doors were closed. Daisuke exhaled in shaky fragments. "Is it over?" Quote. The employee said nothing. He stared at the doors. Then very slowly, shook his head. "Not yet." That moment, static crackled from the elevator speaker. We all looked up at once. And through the static, a voice. Uncle Hiroshi's voice. "Kenji." My whole body locked up. Between bursts of static, he was laughing. It doesn't matter that you went upstairs. Daisuke slammed the speaker with his fist. Shut up. Quote. But the voice kept coming. Because you're already followed. And right then, from the ceiling, we looked up slowly. Something was up there again. Not one, multiple. Crawling across the entire ceiling. The metal panels bending and groaning. And from between the ceiling seams, black water began to drip. The employee whispered. It didn't go up. At that moment the elevator fired upward like a rocket. We were thrown to the floor. And the elevator shot toward the top at a speed that made no sense. Scripture_end. Echo, script written.